All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to talk to you today. It is Friday, so that's kind of the free-for-all day, the day when kind of often revisit topics that we've addressed during the week, and a lot of times the topics are kind of the same week after week. You just saw I had the screen up there with some news from Gaza, and if you're new to my program, and I hope some of you are watching live for the first time, I know I got a lot of new subscribers based on the video I did earlier in the week. Faux-gressives. God, ratio, that's a term I wasn't really clear what it meant until my recent video went up and more people commented on it than liked it. I think that's what the term ratio means right now with respect to videos. If you get a lot of comments, but you don't get a lot of likes, what that means generally is that people are watching, yes, but they're not agreeing. And so the comments tended to be negative, not unfairly so. I mean, I think pretty much everyone who commented was doing so, even those who clearly didn't agree with what I had to say. You know, they were good faith. They said, hey, this is why I disagree with you. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do here, is put together a dialogue where we discuss important issues. I think they're important. Maybe you will too, I hope, if you're new to the program, and try to come up with solutions to our most pressing problems. Today, it's a Friday. Sometimes we get a little more lighthearted. I also have comics on and the like. So we'll get to pizza, I promise you. The news that New Haven is being touted as America's pizza capital is in many media. So we'll get to that. But what viewers should understand, if you're new, is that I really focus lately anyway on centering victims of American imperialism, and that means right now Palestinians, and even more specifically than Palestinians, although all Palestinians are being victimized, in my opinion, right now by Israel, our closest ally, with our full-throated support, but even more particularly people who live in Gaza. And it's horrible. It is a genocide. There's just no question. It's obvious that the intent from Israel is to eliminate, is to eradicate Palestinians, to kill them in mass numbers. And not only is that their intent, but that's exactly what they're doing. That's exactly what Israel is doing. It's heartbreaking for me because of the humanitarian cost, because of the loss of life. That just saddens me to know. And I don't want to say that being Jewish and seeing the atrocities committed by co-religionists somehow makes me feel worse. I don't know that that's completely true, but, you know, it hurts me to know that I used to believe, that I wanted to believe anyway, that Jewish people had a certain sophistication, a certain civilized nature, that we were in some ways a little more cultured than a lot of other groups of people. And it's clear that that's just not the case. We may have better education on average. We may be wealthier than many. We may indeed be more sophisticated in certain areas. I'm willing to acknowledge all of that. But moral superiority? Please. International Court of Justice orders Israel to halt its offensive on Rafah. And things are just as bad as I guess things can always get worse. I won't say they're as bad as they can be. They're as bad as they can be right now. They will become worse. I do want you to bear that in mind, just how bad things are as a result of American support for Israel. I want you to bear that in mind when we get to later on in the program and I respond to some of the criticisms that I've received. But just let's get to this from the New York Times. Hardly a unbiased source, or even less a pro-Palestine source. The New York Times has been carrying water for the Israeli military, for Netanyahu, for the American supporters of Israel since before, obviously, for decades. But clearly their bias has been shown in their coverage of the current assault by Israel on Gaza. Their passive voice headlines that refer to many deaths in Gaza without specifying that, of course, those deaths are the direct result of Israeli action. We see that over and over again. They're continuing to promote the lie that Hamas engaged in rape and other sexual assault as a war weapon on October 7th. That's just clearly been debunked. The New York Times promoted that and has never acknowledged that they were wrong. The New York Times coverage of protests against Israel at colleges frequently refers to the protesters as anti-Semitic or discusses the so-called fear, the alleged fright that they have instilled. The protesters, the pro-life, the pro-Palestine protesters, have allegedly instilled in Israeli and Jewish students without acknowledging that many of the protesters are indeed Jewish students, and without noting that most violence, if not nearly all of it, has been by pro-Israel individuals and groups, and what little has come from the pro-Palestine folks on college campuses and elsewhere has been in response to attacks by the Zionist infiltrators and Zionist provocateurs. So the New York Times is clearly against Palestine, and yet their description of the situation in Rafah and Gaza really does paint an absolutely gruesome picture of a hollowed out void where people are barely, are struggling to just barely survive. It's a place of fear, Rafah is, and dwindling supplies. Bakeries have shuttered, so have malnutrition treatment centers, which of course is so ironic because never have they been more needed than right now. And more from it, the Times there for months, aid experts have warned that famine will come for Gaza unless Israel lifts its barriers, and it hasn't done so. It's done none of that. It hasn't stopped the killing. It's escalated it, and it's just basically, rejected out of hand the ceasefire proposal from supposed ally Egypt and Qatar that the Hamas said, yes, let's just stop this right now, please. And Israel says, nope. Not only that, we're going to keep the trucks out. We're going to keep aid out. When trucks try to get through, Israelis beat up the truckers. There's no health care. There's no fresh water anymore, virtually none. Gaza is dying. And Israel's completely to blame with our help. So there's this sort of technical debate. Is it really a famine? Has it arrived? The head of the UN World Food Program, and I would think they would know better than anybody, says, yes, it has. And even if we were finally able to bring in those trucks that Israel's keeping out, both from Egypt's side and from the Israeli side, many more people will die. It's like what happened when the concentration camps and death camps really were liberated, mostly by the Russians in the East, as they conquered Poland and then Germany from the Third Reich. Yes, they were able to provide immediate aid, support, nutrition to the victims of the Nazis. But still people died. The human skeletons that may have still been breathing when the Red Army liberated Auschwitz, some of them were not able to make it. So that's exactly what we're seeing in Gaza as well. It's hard to understand, and I don't try that. I mean, let me say it this way. I can't really understand how there can be such staunch support for Israel. I guess I can. Look, there's a lot of money. There's a lot of support from AIPAC and other pro-Israel lobbyists and the media for those who simply close their eyes or worse, deny what Israel's doing. So there is a certain reward you get. And look, it's hard to buck your tribe, right? I mean, if you're Jewish, you're saying, hey, my people, the state that I was raised to believe is the bulwark against another Holocaust, has become itself a genocidal nation. It's hard to say. I mean, for me, it's not hard. I've never to be honest with you, I know intellectually it's hard, but for me, it isn't hard. And so I have trouble. I really do. I really have trouble, what's the word? Some empathizing with those who, for whatever reason, can't simply say, yes, Israel is an evil country. I get that's really hard for a lot of Jewish people. I know it is intellectually. I don't understand why. It really is. It's a hard one for me. By the way, if you want to join me, I'd love to talk to you about this or any really issue that's on your mind. 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. What I really want to believe about this program, and again, I was really heartened. I'm not going to go on and on, but really heartened by that, the hits it got, that earlier program this week, because it tells me that this program can be successful. I'm not saying it will be, but we can get there. But what I really want to do with this is engage in that collective dialogue to solve problems. So, please join me, 240-242-5646 if you have thoughts on what I'm saying. And maybe you can explain why it's so hard for many people to just simply say, yeah, Israel is just flat out wrong. Of course, Fox News here is questioning the death number. So the death count is north of 35,000 now. We've been tracking it on this program. I don't have an exact number right now, and we'll get to why that is or is not important, that we don't have an exact number, but Reuters is reporting over 35,000. I believe that number comes from the Ministry of Health in Gaza, which, as the pro-Israel media invariably points out, is controlled by Hamas, so you shouldn't believe it, right? I mean, that's just the end of it. It's because the Ministry of Health in Gaza is ultimately part of the Gazan Palestinian government. Therefore, it's Hamas. Therefore, you don't believe it. You can't believe it. Just throw it out. Those numbers are meaningless. And here's Fox News. Hamas Gaza Health Ministry under a microscope as questions continue over a number of deaths. One of the issues, that came up recently that was fodder for the extremists who deny the death count is that the UN reduced the total, the numbers of women and children that it concluded had been killed by Israel. It didn't reduce the total death count. It said, no, the death count that we are getting from the Ministry of Health, we deem reliable. Sources on the ground besides the Ministry of Health deem it reliable. The reason we're reducing the number of women and children dead is because many of the cadavers, the bodies, the corpses, whatever term you want to use, have not been identified. So we don't know, is it a small adult or is it a child? Sometimes the trunk, the torso has been so burned or beyond recognition, we can't even be certain if it's a male or a female. So we know based on the count of the actual bodies that this is a reliable figure. We accept that the Ministry of Health is counting the corpses. Where we are not certain is that the identifications of every corpse of the 35,000 or so, 34,000 at that point, 33,000 at that point, we're not convinced that they have identified correctly each of the 10,000 unidentified victims of Israeli aggression. So that's what came up, and it actually is perfectly credible. It makes perfect sense. They're saying, hey, we've got a lot of unidentified bodies, so we're not going to, we understand the Ministry of Health. They may very well have done a good job of identifying their gender, their sex, not their gender, their sex, their age, but we're not sure about that. But that has now become a right-wing mantra that the numbers from Gaza aren't credible. And that's where Fox is going with this. So Fox, explains why you shouldn't believe Hamas's numbers, Ministry of Health's numbers. There's so much destruction and chaos. Israel has done so much damage. It has completely torn apart the country. It's basically all rubble. Fox says, hey, it's so bad there that how can we possibly think that they can correctly identify the number of dead? That's a hell of a defense for Israel, isn't it? Israel has so screwed up has so obliterated the entire infrastructure in Gaza that we can't even believe that the Ministry of Health can correctly count the number of dead. It's a hell of a defense. It really, to me, isn't a very persuasive argument that Israel isn't a genocidal, hasn't become a genocidal maniacal state. And by the way, they correctly note that aid agencies, media outlets, and such do continue to support the Ministry of Health figures. That's because they've been deemed reliable time and time again. I've shown you various sources that have said, various reliable sources, the BBC. Ministry of Health numbers have been shown reliable in conflict after conflict. When they say Israel's killed this many people, it's true. I mean, maybe they got it wrong one or two off, but they're pretty much correct time after time. That's what the Lancet said, the top medical journal from the UK. They're saying, no, we believe the Ministry of Health, and it's not like because we have faith in them, we believe them because they're right, because they do it correctly. They simply line up the bodies and count them. Well, Fox is saying, hey, we can't believe you're doing much counting anymore. The roads are all choked with debris. Buildings have collapsed on people. How can you possibly be accurate? And here's the answer to that. They're not completely accurate. The number of dead are much greater than what's been reported. There are plenty of people who are, bodies under buildings, bodies that have been burned up, bodies in locations where they can't be reached. So yes, you're right, Fox. The numbers right now aren't going to be complete by any means. The situation is worse, without question, is worse because of what Israel's doing. And in fact, you'll see that the numbers from the Ministry of Health now are round numbers. They're not giving like 35,387. They're just saying over 35,000. And you can see here from this report from Reuters this morning, in northern Gaza, medics said at least 5 Palestinians were killed when houses were hit in Jabalia. So they identify 5, they add those to the death count. It's horrible, it's awful, and more were believed to be trapped under rubble, but under the rubble they couldn't reach. So they're not, the dead under the rubble aren't being added to the death count. So anyone who starts arguing, oh, they're not reliable, the figures can't be corroborated, we don't trust Hamas, they're just lying to you, or they're making an argument that when even, viewed at from a vast distance, clearly cuts against Israel. We've got to do something different. Even Reuters noted that as fundamentally incredible, unreliable, dishonest as Israel is, they're not really taking broad issue with the numbers. Now, they're saying it's a little lower, right? than what what the Ministry of Health is saying. But basically, yeah, 30,000 dead out of a population. What is it? 1%. Over 1% has already been killed by it. If this was the United States, that'd be 3.5 million people. 1% of Gaza, 2.5 million. They're saying over 1%, 30,000. 1% of the United States, we have 350 million people here. That'd be 3.5 million. And Netanyahu say, yeah, we probably killed 30,000. Of course, 14,000 of those are Hamas fighters. So it's okay that 16,000 aren't. But that number is clearly bogus. You can't believe that for a second. The Israeli government, like what Obama used to do, right? We'd have these drone attacks and they would, report civilian deaths. But if you were a male, adult, or even a teenager and you were a man, you were considered a militant. You were considered a combatant for U.S. drone casualty purposes. And still our death count from the drones that Obama was deploying during the Afghan war and against Pakistan and wherever else he was sending those drones, the death count was the great majority of whom were killed were, in fact, even by the U.S. numbers, civilians. And in fact, the U.S. numbers vastly inflated the number of combatants that the drones killed. And by the way, Trump, who I have been accused of not taking nearly hard enough to task, has he escalated the drone program. So he was even worse, if possible, than Obama on drones. You got a hell of a choice there. You got Genocide Joe and you got this guy, Trump, who hides from the American people just how bad his drone program was. And of course, there are many other areas where we can criticize these bad choices, these bad options that we have. So there's really but I just wanted to say, so again, the 35,000 figure, according to Fox, you can't believe the Ministry of Health numbers because they can't be precise because Israel's done so much harm to the entire nation. And I don't think there's any argument there. That's why now the Ministry of Health is reporting these round numbers, like 35,000, right? Not, as I said, not a specific number. They just know the numbers just keep rising and are much higher than the official death count. Listen, I'd really like to talk to you if you want to. I'm going to move on to my next topic, and it's kind of a bit of a abrupt shift, right? I mean, because things are so awful in Gaza. It is the most deadly place on the planet right now. We're supporting it. Our weapons continue to flow to Israel at Joe Biden's direction, at the approval with the authority of the Congress of the United States, controlled in the Senate by the Democrats. Many Democrats joining with the Republicans in the House to authorize billions of dollars to go to Israel just in the past few months. So this is about as bad as a country can be right now. The only thing worse than providing the means for the genocide, which is what we're doing, is, I guess, to be actively engaged in it as our closest ally, Israel, is doing. So it's a grim story. It's a incredibly upsetting story, but it's one that we have to center. We have to discuss. I just don't know what else we can possibly do. Certainly, pretending it's not happening is not something I will ever do. But I'd love to talk to you about that. 240-242-5646. What you propose, what your reaction is to this. I would note that mine is you can't vote for Joe Biden. You just can't. I mean, at some point, if a leader is that bad, is doing such awful things, I don't believe you can support that leader. And no matter how much you point to the other guy and claim that he's worse, and I think probably on this issue for sure, Trump is worse. Trump has actually criticized Biden for not being awful enough. but I just can't go to that. The evil is so palpable. It's interesting, you know, because people don't view this, right? I mean, no one thinks of themselves as evil. Trump doesn't think he's evil. Trump doesn't really think he did anything wrong on January 6th or the days leading up to it when he actively tried to subvert our democracy. And I'm guessing Joe Biden feels like he's doing the best he can under the circumstances with Israel. But obviously he's not. You just cut off aid altogether. He has the power to do that. I'm sure AOC thinks she's doing the best she can when it comes to Israel, but she's not. She's out there campaigning for Biden. She should be calling for an immediate ceasefire, demanding it, and saying she can't support a president who's going to help kill Gazans in record numbers. Friday Free for All 240-242-5646. So we'll move to a slightly, well, it's a lot less grim. Here's the thumbnail for today's program. So is New Haven America's pizza capital? And I was, that really caught my attention. The politicians from Connecticut are pushing hard to make the Elm City the center of the American pizza world. And I got to say, I'm right there with them. I love New Haven pizza. I was note on Facebook that, I'm a native New Yorker, and I don't live in New York now. I haven't for many years, but I was born in New York City, and I was raised, my first 4 years, I lived there in New York, in Manhattan, right? And then outside Manhattan in Westchester County, where we also have excellent pizza. So for a New Yorker to say, no, I'm good with New Haven as the capital of pizza, that's kind of maybe a little bit of a bold position, right? I mean, look, I think I'm known. People have often said sometimes, Hal, you're a little bit of an extremist. You go out there. So maybe this is a good example of that. Yeah, please do subscribe. I was hoping not to have it shown when I just played it, but obviously I did something wrong there. So let me just get that subscribe button properly shown on your screen. I think I'm going to do it, by the way, click right bottom of your screen. We're going to do it one more time. I always have trouble. There's something about these little GIFs that seem not to show up correctly on the screens. I'm not sure why that is. So yeah, now the thing is, maybe my love for New Haven pizza isn't really as bold as it sounds. I did go to college in Connecticut, only about 15, 20 miles east of New Haven, just up the Connecticut River from New Haven. So, I mean, it wasn't like it was that far. I would drive down there sometimes. I had actually been to Yale when I was in high school for these Model UN conferences. You see a lot of pizza when I was at those conferences. So I've definitely been exposed to New Haven pizza from a young age. And I didn't live that far from New Haven growing up. I was on the New Haven line, the New York-New Haven line. So it's not that big a stretch for me, even as a New Yorker, to embrace New Haven pizza. And then again, New Haven pizza isn't really that different from New York style pizza. So nevertheless, I am bucking my so-called tribe, my New York tribe, by embracing New Haven pizza. Now, I'm a pizzaiolo. I make my own pizza. I think the pizza I show in this video, if I were, in my thumbnail, if I were being more honest, I think I wouldn't have used my own pizza for the thumbnail. I would have used an image from, say, Sally's or Pepe's or Modern or some other great New Haven pizzeria. But no, I used my own, and that doesn't even look really like a New Haven pizza. New Haven pizzas are kind of misshapen. That one is one of my more round efforts. They're oblongs. They use these ancient coal ovens with these, they just sort of shove in as many pizzas as they can into those ovens when they're serving people. So they're not round because you can fit fewer circles in any, square area than you can squares, right? I mean, you get more dough, more pizza per square inch in a oven if you use a squarer shaped pizza than a round one. So that's not really what a New Haven pizza looks like. It was a little bit of an untruth in advertising, but I felt like using my own pizza. Anyway, I make pizza, so I've always kind of viewed New Haven pizza as kind of the be all, the end all, the ideal. And the New Haven Pizzaiolos have now joined forces, which is interesting because there's such a competition among them to call for New Haven being identified as U.S. pizza capital. And excuse me, I have a little itch in my eye there, I'm scratching. So the chefs, 110, a lot of pizzerias in New Haven. By the way, it's not like they're all just a bunch of different Papa John's and Domino's and Pizza Hut outlets, which are obviously in the front. They're awful, right? I mean, just it's not food. It's not edible. It's despicable. It's disgusting. It's loathsome. It's horrible. And I can't in any way countenance eating that stuff. No offense if you like them, but it's awful. And one of the, again, New Haven, it's not like those 110 chefs are working at, 30 Pizza Huts, and then there's, the Little Caesars and all those horrible places. These are chef-owned. These are entrepreneur-owned. These are individual restaurants, stand-alone restaurants by and large. So they went down and they chartered an Avello jet to support the declaration that Washington be, that New Haven be the pizza capital. Now, I highlighted the chartered because, as a big opponent of fossil fuel consumption and using and flying and, criticizing wasteful travel, transport, this jumped out at me. And I don't mind say I'm a hypocrite because, I do travel and I do fly and I've been, taken to task for that. And it is a problem. I wish I didn't. And I don't like it, but if I want to go somewhere I've never been and it's far away, what choice do I have? We don't have high-speed trains. I guess there's really not even ocean liners anymore. Not that that was a better solution to the problem. My solution, of course, is we tax and we keep raising the price of the travel, and then that's how we disincentivize it. So the charter jet I'm not thrilled with, but what else are they going to do? Yes, there's a train, but it's very inconvenient. Once you get north of New York on the Amtrak, you got to switch at Penn Station. It's a horrible, mess there. It's always slow. The trains are often delayed. These are restaurant owners. These are chefs. They have they got to be back to their restaurant that night. So I get it. They had to charter the jet. It's not the end of the world. All right, go ahead. Take your jet, fly down to D.C. with Congresswoman DeLauro. And I, for one, support them. And here's somebody else who also supports. The pizza's so good. You can read what I posted on. I actually sent a letter to the New Haven Register. I hope they publish it. And if they do, I'll share it with you. And maybe if they don't, I'll share it with you. But just to name some of the great restaurants there, currently the big three, they're called. I don't know if they call them that in New Haven, but Modern, Sally's, and Pepe's. And by the way, Sally's, I think, is a notch above. It's clearly the winner. But the others are really good too. And I've had lots of great, the York side has the best Greek pizza I've ever had. It's not just that New Haven style, which is thin crust, coal oven fired, and oblong shaped. It's never by the slice. It's thin, charred. It's really important that it be charred crust. It adds a lot of flavor. So that's kind of the New Haven style. It's not that different, frankly. It's not that different from New York. New York's a little thicker. Usually the crust is thicker, and they use a harder flour. So it's really, I think, a little crunchier. But they're pretty similar. But it's not just that New Haven style, right? I mean, I've had the Demery's and Naples / Wall Street pizzas were outstanding New York style. Although they're closed now, so it's kind of sad they closed. I'm sure there's lots of good ones I don't know. I haven't been to New Haven in a while. I haven't eaten pizza there in a while. And when I go, I usually just go to Sally's when I get a chance because it's my favorite. The best pizza I've had in D.C. lately is from Pepe's. They had opened an outlet, right? They've expanded. And so there are Pepe's in other places too, including in Westchester, New York. But Westchester, lots of good pizza. I don't think you need to have a Pepe's there. Not that Pepe's isn't really good, but, just fine. Have the pizza, Westchester style pizza, New York style pizza in Westchester. But they opened a Pepe's down here in D.C. where the pizza's lousy, and it's actually the best you can find in this area that I found anyway. This guy's pretty brave. I'm not a Tom Suozzi fan. He's pretty much of a centrist. But listen, if you're from Long Island, where they have lots of great pizza, and you come out and you support the claim of New Haven to be pizza capital, that's pretty, he's got some big ones there. I give it to him. And again, he's a centrist, not my favorite, but what Democrat is my favorite? I don't know. If you said, who's your favorite Democrat, I guess it's Ilhan Omar. I guess so, but I don't know. But you might be able to argue differently. I understand she wasn't nearly as supportive of the Somalian rebels. She's Somali, I believe. And there's real concerns about her support for true liberation for Somalia. But maybe I'd say Ilhan Omar. I don't know. Another not my favorite, AOC. So she, like Suozzi, she'll take advantage. There's a crowd. I'm going to go over there, get some pictures in with veterans. Always looks good to be photoed with veterans, I suppose, AOC. But she didn't stay long enough to discuss which pizzas she prefers. So I don't give her a lot of credit for that. That's kind of cowardly. Hey, if you want to champion your borough, you're in Queens, just say, hey, no, the best pizzas over there at Astoria Pizza. I don't know if there's such a place called Astoria Pizza, but I was in Astoria last weekend, so I'm mentioning that. But yeah, go give a shout out. This is your opportunity. Give a quick shout out to your borough, if that's your favorite. Or hey, be like Suozzi and say, you know what? I'm a New Yorker. I love New York. But I got to say that New Haven style is the best. That would be pretty cool if she said that, I got to admit. Now, is any of this stuff important? No, it isn't. But you know why we focus on the de minimis stuff? Because our electeds aren't there for us. They're not championing us. They're not fighting for us. They're not doing what's best. They're using issues like pizza to try to get our votes. So I'll play along. If you're going to use pizza, then be bold. Then take a position. Then challenge even your constituents maybe. But you're not even getting that. It's very unfortunate. All right, 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. I want to get to more politics. Started with the situation in Gaza, moved on to pizza. This guy, kind of interesting. He gets a lot of attention. I'll be honest, I don't really get it. Like, I've watched a few of his videos, mainly when they're posted by someone else. I don't know that I've ever gone to Charlemagne the God site, right? But I don't see, he's obviously, I'm not the target audience. I'm not sure who is the target audience, but I don't find him to be particularly interesting as a host, so I don't really get it. I'll give you another thing I don't find that interesting. I don't find Joe Rogan that interesting, and he's so popular. They sort of provide a certain centrist view. It doesn't do anything for me. But Charlemagne there getting a lot of attention because he went on The View and he wouldn't endorse specifically Joe Biden. But he was real clear, without actually coming out and saying it, that he supports and will vote for Joe Biden for president. By the way, that's an interesting shift, an interesting difference with our friend Kyle Kulinski, who I criticized on Tuesday as a faux aggressive because he did not endorse Jill Stein for president, even though Sabby and others, Jill Stein, say that he did endorse Jill Stein. In fact, he did not. There's no clear statement. Charlamagne God's real upfront. I'm not endorsing Joe Biden, but he also is real clear he's going to vote for Joe Biden. Kyle never says, even in so many words, he's definitely voting for Jill Stein. I can't call that guy a progressive. I understand a lot of you want to believe he is. I know a lot of you want to think he's on your side. I don't see it. By the way, before we play this video, there's Robbie Suave. Rising reacts now they spell Charlemagne wrong. Now that's Charlemagne the Emperor, but Charlemagne the God. And I think they're going to spell it correctly at some point here. I think so. I'll show you when they get it right. All right, let's go to Rising.
Yes, although I think he's good. He plans to vote for Biden, which is my criticism of Charlemagne the God, is that I think he's not going far enough. What he's doing that.
Right. So just let me stop it because she talks really quickly, and it's, again, I highlight Brianna Joy Gray because I basically agree with her more than anybody else. Not always, and when we disagree, I let you know it. But she says things sometimes, and I'm like, okay, I didn't say it that way, but I think it's really persuasive the way she says it. So I want to present the same view that I have, but in a slightly different words, from a slightly different or from a different source, and maybe from a slightly different perspective. So she says her problem is, she says, yeah, he said he's going to vote for Biden, but that's my problem. That's mine too, Brianna Joy.
If you are voting for Biden, but you're not going to do an endorsement, that seems
just
like a very
say it.
silly
Like,
difference.
say I'm voting for Biden. Like, at a certain point, it seems like sophistry. Like, what face are you trying to save here? If you don't like Biden, but you're going to vote for him, then you are succumbing to this vote blue no matter who, and just own that you think it's important to save the democracy and do that.
Right.
But I think what would be actually more powerful and more interesting is if he truly resisted vote blue no matter who, because frankly, the only way, in my view, democracy is going to get saved is if you force the Democrats to actually be democratic and force them to actually uphold their stated values in order to earn those votes. You don't get anything out of saying months and years before an election cycle.
Let me just pause her. So 100%. The only way we're going to save our democracy is by forcing the Democrats to govern in a pro-people, pro-worker way. If we vote blue no matter who, and this is what Brianna Joy Gray is saying, if we vote blue no matter who, given the current dynamic within the Democratic Party, which is a corporatist, pro-war party, if we vote blue no matter who, given that dynamic, we do not have democracy. The Democratic Party is not responding to the wishes, much less the needs, of the great majority of Americans. It's acting in its own self-interest, and it's acting in the interest of the minority at the top, a small minority. It's not as though the Democratic Party is imperfect. It's not as though, as Brianna Joy Gray correctly says, she's right. It's not as though they're doing some good things. The Democratic Party is actively harming our country. And the only way to stop, and therefore voting for it is not going to save our democracy. It's going to continue to cost us our freedoms. Only by saying to the Democratic Party, we're not voting for you. You will lose. You will lose unless you take power back from the wealthiest, and you govern in a way that is to the benefit of poor, struggling, working people, which you are not doing right now. All right, let's see if we can get that video.
To actually be democratic and force them to actually uphold their stated values in order to earn those votes. You don't get anything out of saying months and years before an election cycle that no matter what Joe Biden or insert generic Democrat is going to do, you're going to vote for them no matter what. That is a guaranteed formula to make sure your vote is never earned.
All right, let me stop it for a second. So I know some of the people who disagree with me will say, wait a sec, you do get something if you say, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden before he's made any concessions. You're getting, hopefully, not Trump. You're not getting Trump. That's what you're saying to yourself. Well, but wait a second. You are getting something. We're going to stop Trump, hopefully. And my response to that is, that's not good enough. We're not in a situation where it's Trump bad and everything else is good. We're in a situation where Trump bad, Biden bad. Both are bad. Neither one is progressive. Neither one is taking us in a good direction. And things are so serious, so dire, that we cannot afford to vote for the lesser of two evils. It's not like we have the time to kick another 4 years or 8 years down the road, kick the can down the road. The planet is burning up right now. It's getting hotter and hotter. We're expelling more and more CO2 into the atmosphere. We are complicit in genocide. It's not okay to say, all right, but it would be even worse under Trump. No, you don't get to say that. You have to say, this isn't okay. We have to do something else to change it.
And when people say, no, I'm withholding my vote, I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden as a knee-jerk reflection, what they're often told is you're being apathetic or you want Donald Trump to win. No, I am giving you as a voter an opportunity to court me, to get my vote, but it requires you to actually change your policies that are so anathema to what most Americans want.
So that's where she says, the policies that are anathema to what most Americans want. I don't really go so far as to say what Americans want, because public opinion shifts. I mean, I'm not clear right now that the American public is so behind, for example, Gaza. She's going to argue that, but I think it's a lot closer. I think you have to say, I'm withholding my vote until you pursue policies that are going to make America a better place, not a worse place. That's kind of my litmus test. On balance, is what you're doing reducing wealth and income inequality? Is it demilitarizing our country? Is it reducing violence? Is it reducing intra within class strife? Or is it enhancing those things? Is it leading to a better educated populace or worse? And the answer is the policy that the Democrats pursue make things worse in all those areas. Not better, worse. That's why you shouldn't vote for them.
Change on Gaza, do something about the economy, fulfill your promises to black voters, whatever it is, to change, and then you have an opportunity to actually get those votes. But asking voters to say that they're going to commit to voting down for a party, no matter what they say or do, is exactly how you get a Democratic Party that drifts to the right, courting Republican voters whose votes aren't considered to be entitled, given to the Democrats. So they keep courting those people. They keep shifting more and more to the right. And meanwhile, you have an entire base who's standing there with their arms in the air saying, well, what am I, chopped liver? You just have.
All right, so I'll stop there because the point is clear. She's 100% correct. The Democratic Party is pursuing, she focuses more on what the public wants and says the politicians aren't doing what people want. I'm not 100% sure about that. I think what a leader does is they don't just follow public opinion. They govern in a way that leads to better results for their constituents. And once you do that, once you say, hey, I get maybe Medicare for all isn't that popular, although she says it is, and it is, it polls well, but it also depends on the question. I get maybe you don't think Medicare for all is exactly the right solution, but you know what? we're going to try it because what we're doing now is so awful, and because it does work in other countries, and you pursue it. And then if it, as it would work, you're going to get much, much more popular. People are going to be like, oh my God, this is great. I now have health care. My children get treated when they're sick and I don't have to worry about paying the bill. That's not the Democratic Party. They invariably use polls whenever possible to justify doing the wrong thing. And when the polls don't support doing the wrong thing, then they make excuses. All right. Let me get to probably not my least favorite politician, but he's pretty darn bad. This is another fundraiser. I showed you a fundraising ad I got from AOC, which I didn't like. I didn't like it at all. It's pretty much policy free. She talked about how she had democratized fundraising, which again means she's raising money from people who can't afford it to give the money, and hasn't made real change. And she wasn't real specific about whatever policy changes she liked. So from this guy, it's a guy. This representative sends me a personal email. Well, it's not so personal, friend, which we're not. But this guy leads with, hey, people are calling it the Democrat Party and that Democrat Congresswoman. Grating and irritating, no? Well, yeah, and you know what? If you don't like it, Jamie, okay, yeah, it's Jamie you're asking. I don't care. So too bad if you don't like it. I mean, why do I care whether you don't like being referred to as that Democrat Congress member? Too bad. Wow, you don't like being slightly mischaracterized? Oh, by the way, I like how he says, can't pronounce. By the way, what kind of is this like the worst politics ever to write this? You may have noticed that some people can't pronounce the name of our party correctly, and it's adjectival form. Who even knew there was a word called adjectival? I guess if you're a Harvard law professor, you're a Harvard educated law professor, you do, but most people don't. Let me tell you what, Jamie, this is not what people care about. You know what they care about? I just said it, healthcare. You know what they care about? Jobs. They don't care whether you're irritated and grated because, or it grates on your ears and you're irritated because someone called you a Democrat Congress member. No one cares about that except you. Why don't you think about governing on behalf of the American people and doing what we want and doing what we care about, not whining about how you don't like the name that you're being called. And yes, it's very funny. We could call them the Banana Republican Party and the Banana Republican Congressman. Okay. Really. So now I tell them, do what FDR did, cost the democracy. Here's what I say to you. Don't worry about what the Republicans call you. Govern in a way that will make life better for the American people. Pursue policies that will improve the day-to-day circumstances that so many of us struggle through. Not me. My life is good. I'm not including myself in that group. But if you really want to win elections and you want to be beloved and you want people to call you a Democratic politician, then I say govern in a way that makes life better for people who may be not even voting for you. What is Raskin campaign on? Why should we support him? Why should we give him money? Because the Democrat Party is the only party standing up for the right to vote and free and fair elections, for respecting the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, for strong democracy, and for every woman and man's personal freedom. It all sounds so nice and such lofty principles. I don't disagree. Those are all real good things, Raskin. But again, I think you got, and what that clown down in Louisiana gets it better than you. What is his name? He looks like Skeletor. Carville, right? Carville. It's the economy, stupid. you know, democracy is lovely, a strong democracy, personal freedom. They all sound so nice until it's a question of paying the rent or paying for a doctor to save your wife's life because she's, you know, having an emergency appendectomy. She needs an emergency appendectomy. That's where the rubber meets the road. And I understand you've got a great gig as a Congress member and you've got your health care and, you know, taken care of. And I understand you're a law professor, but you don't seem to have any, and I've never even heard you talk about the desperate circumstances that so many Americans face every day. So your words just ring hollow. And I would just make one final point, and then we're going to go, because this guy is such a pitta. Actually, that's mischaracterizes him. He's jerk. For him to like present himself as this kind of somebody who cares about politesse and some kind of, you know, the parties need to, you know, get along and have some kind of, you know, use manners, right? Have good manners and not call each other names like the Democrat Party. He's like he's always prepared to make fun of people he doesn't agree with. He's always there to, you know, mock Republicans whenever he gets a chance. So, you know, no, I'm not giving you a penny. We can go out with this.
Let's support our police officers. Let's vote for good things to help citizens in this city. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Will the gentlelady yield for a question?
No, I will not yield to one of your stupid questions that are always attacking
Right,
me.
so she's reacting to Raskin. Did he call her a gentleman? I want to go back because I thought she said, will the gentleman yield to a question? Let's see, because I think he may have said that. I want to show that because, again, for him to present himself as some kind of mannered, respectful, somebody who respects the traditions of Congress and is so outraged by the mean Republicans who call him a Democrat representative, not a Democratic one. So here's Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Chairman, I yield back.
Will the gentlelady yield for a question?
No.
Okay, so he said, I guess he says, will the gentle lady. So there it is. Will the gentle lady yield for a question? Okay, so that's okay.
I will not yield to one of your stupid questions that are always attacking me and attacking President Trump.
How about?
All right, so she's, you know, I'm not defending Taylor Greene, let's be real clear. But Raskin goes right down to her level. And he uses his smarts and his smarminess and his snark to try to embarrass her. And it just makes him, in my opinion, look really, really bad.
About a mediocre
No, I don't want
question.
to. I do not want your
So
question.
it's mediocre. She says, I'm not going to yield to one of your stupid questions. Well, how about a mediocre one?
Question?
No.
A smart question?
No, my time.
An intelligent question?
You have no smart or intelligent questions.
All right, so there it is. So it's just, that's the level of discourse. And, you know, Raskin doesn't rise above it. Raskin doesn't, in fact, try to discuss important issues or come up with solutions. And, you know, so why would I ever give him money? All right, that's going to do it for today's program for the week. I'll be back Monday. It will be a Monday with Arlen. We confirmed that yesterday. Enjoy your weekend.